Welcome back to MOMnation Unscripted. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I am Kelly with Oh Lardy, and it is our mission to get toxin-free products into every home and more money into more people's pockets. 8 years ago, we were moms who couldn't stop sharing education on real food, gut health, and fermenting. Over the years, we started paying attention to not only what we put in our bodies, but also what we put on our bodies. Now, as movement makers, we are on a mission to show you how you and your family can live a toxin-free lifestyle. Follow us on Instagram at kelly.liston and at Tamara Manley, and email us at olardyblog@gmail.com to connect.
And I think we're live. Are we live?
I think
we
so.
are now.
We are, yes. Hi, Katie. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. I've just been doing like live streams all day, I feel like, but hey, it's good to be back. I actually started thyroid medication just over a week ago.
Oh,
and
love it.
I feel like a new person. Like I thought that I just hated everything and didn't want to do anything anymore and just wanted to lay in bed all the time. Turns out my hormones were crushed. So yeah, Kimber, who's with us, she actually was the one who convinced me to do it. I had actually been prescribed the thyroid medication. And I was like, I don't know if I really want to take it because I'm not out of range. I was just really, really low, but like barely in range. And so I started taking the medication after Kimber was telling me that she took it and she started to have energy and feel like herself again. And so anyway, just one weekend and I just can't believe the difference.
I can't believe how much of a difference, like hormones are a thing and they affect so much more than what you're going through. They affect people in such different ways.
Yeah.
I actually figured out last year, so I'm 40 years old, I'm going to be 41 in June. And I still have like acne like a teenager. Like there's another reason besides having bangs that I have bangs, okay? Because it tends to really affect my forehead. And I get like this cystic acne. And I couldn't get enough products. I couldn't do enough things, change my diet, whatever it was, to get rid of this stuff. Lo and behold, I get to the doctor and she's like, let's do a hormone test. It ended up being that I was too high on testosterone. And that was what was causing the issue for me.
So for me, yeah. So I actually have like no testosterone and no estrogen. I'm like,
cool.
Most women are like estrogen dominant if they have a hormone problem. I just like have nothing. I'm just,
that's what mine's even Steven. I've got high both. It's fun. I took testosterone blockers for years to get rid of my acne. It was pretty ugly, but it worked. I had acne for 20 years. Oh, I can't believe I lived like that.
Seriously.
This is living. This is really living. Like I don't have to put makeup on in the morning. I can just go.
Yeah, hormones like are so crazy. It's just so crazy that like they can do that much to you. So, oh man. So Katie was on a cruise this week.
Yep.
Which so intrigued by that on 100 levels, because for anybody who's listening back to this episode later down the road, this is happening right after the coronavirus crisis began.
Yeah, well, yes and no. So right before
in the US. In the
right.
US.
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
So right, go ahead.
So I've just been dying to ask you about this because you're literally on a cruise and then the whole world shuts down while you're on a cruise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what was that like? Like, did you just like come into port and all of a sudden you check your social media and you're like, what's happening? Or like what? I can't wrap my head around it. What was that like?
So it was a little freaky. Had I known what I would come home to, I probably wouldn't have left. I probably just would have stayed home because honestly, it was a bit stressful getting back. We had a great time on our vacation though, so super grateful for that. Had lots of family time, which was awesome. Before we left, so we left last Saturday, and before we left, there was like 21 cases in the entire country, and things seemed pretty under control. Nobody was too freaked out about it. We were aware of it. We had to get our temperature taken before we got on the boat, which we knew that was going to happen. Totally fine. Nobody was doing anything in the airports. The airport was full. No gloves, masks, anything like that happening. Fast forward a few days later, I think it was probably Thursday that we actually found out about, things getting shut down and kind of the severity of everything and how quickly it had spread. And it's, when you're on a cruise, I don't know if you guys been on a cruise before, but you tend to sit with people that you don't know for dinner and stuff like that. And so we had been having this lovely time all week sitting with this amazing female pilot, very smart. I'm so glad to have met her. We had such wonderful conversations. And she happened to have received a message from work because she's an airline pilot for American, I believe. And she heard about the international travel to Europe getting shut down and told us about it. So then, which we would have never done this before. So then we, finished up dinner, raced back to our room and threw the news on because we actually did get the news on the boat. I'm not a huge news watcher. I like watching press conferences. I don't like to get the regurgitated information. I like to hear it from the horse's mouth. So once the press conferences started coming out, that's basically all that we listened to were the press conferences. After Thursday night, things drastically changed on the boat. Obviously, there was a lot of chatter. There was people who were, had no idea what was going on, so people were informing them. There were people in sheer panic, crying the whole bit. They stopped allowing any self-service on the boat, so you couldn't self-serve your own drinks because they have a little section where this is what my kid loves about being on the cruise ship is that you can get your own ice cream, you know what I mean? And so we were getting ice cream like every 3 seconds. Well, you can't serve yourself ice cream anymore. Couldn't get drinks anymore. We started to get a bit nervous by Friday since we were flying out on Saturday that if domestic travel gets shut down, how are we going to get home? We were docked we were at port in Florida at Port Canaveral. So we still had a little hop, skip, and a jump to get home, luckily. And then on the boat, they're making all these announcements about all of the parks, because we were on the Disney boat. So all of the parks that they were shutting down, and they were making announcements pretty repeatedly about, wash your hands and practice cleanliness and things like that. Then we get off the boat on Saturday, and that Saturday morning announcement basically was that was the last Disney cruise for who knows how long, but nobody else was cruising after us. So we were on the last cruise, and we were getting kind of nervous being in Florida, hearing a lot of chatter that they were going to shut down domestic travel to and from Florida because Florida was getting hit pretty hard. It was starting to rapidly increase there. So we feel like we just kind of at the nick of time got off the boat and at the nick of time got off the plane. We ended up making it home as planned, and have chosen to self-quarantine for the next 14 days. Well, I'm on day 3 now, just due to where we traveled. We just figured, hey, you know what? We'll stay home. We're Costco shoppers, so we had a pretty good stock of things anyway. It was a little freaky to get home and to need to go out and get food, though, which we did that night. And it was a little eerie, with the shelves being so bare. But that was my experience, and I've been home ever since. Yeah,
that is crazy. Oh my gosh.
So how about you? You traveled to Utah. Was there anything happening there?
Well, so I was in Utah. Jack actually ended up coming down with a fever and a cough and lung infection while we were there, which makes me very nervous on 2 levels because we were there, but also my stepmother-in-law who we were visiting, she's on radiation.
Oh gosh.
And then my mother-in-law, she recently in January, she had a really bad bronchitis infection that, came, she said that it came close to like killing her. So, it makes me nervous. So I'm very nervous for the next couple of weeks to see, like, did we infect these poor women? So that's really fun. But yeah, it all started to go down while we were there. It actually was really bad, because while Jack's sick with this, he ended up getting a fever, like over, it was 104 degrees, and we couldn't find Tylenol anywhere. We couldn't find children's Tylenol anywhere. And so we ended up having to like figure out, okay, what's a child's dose? And we had to like take adult pills and crush it and then put it in water and get him to drink that. And then that made him throw up because it tasted so gross.
Gross. Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And so anyway, it took us, it took about 24 hours to find Tylenol. And then we finally found some. The only flavor that was left was cherry, which goes to speak to the fact that cherry is such a gross flavor. And
all gross.
yes. And so, he just was so sick the whole time, and it was so sad. But my in-laws, they were going to Costco and taking pictures from Costco of standing outside the building, and you have to wait like an hour to get in, and then to actually buy food. They, at the back of Costco, they were at the back of the meat department, and it was completely fanned out, and people had to wait like 2 hours to get through the checkout lines to get food.
Dang.
And so it was insane. And the toilet paper is wiped out. All paper products are wiped out. It's really intense. So then we got home, and I started to just like get in my rhythm. And Sunday night, I'm just starting to feel really like, I've got this. We're going to be fine. Like, I can handle this. And Jack is upstairs showering. So Jack is almost 5 now. But all of a sudden he starts screaming, and it's like that screaming that, something is really wrong.
Yeah.
And my husband's, upstairs, and he runs into the shower to check on him. And he's just like, Beth, get up here. No, I hate that. I hate that sound. And
You don't want to see it. You don't.
yeah, I honestly, I start to like panic, and I like start to blame him, because my kids have gotten stitches 3 times now, and he's been the one watching them every time. And so, I'm like looking for a hand towel to put on his bleeding head, because I'm avoiding going up there, let's be honest. And so then I finally get up there, and, he has like a 2-inch gash across his eyebrow, and he was just, bleeding. So I went to go take him to, take my daughter Autumn to our neighbor's house to ask them, like, can you watch her while we go take him to get stitches? And my husband is LDS, and so his bishop, it turns out, is like a traumatic facial surgeon, pediatric facial surgeon. And so we were getting ready to go to urgent care, but our neighbors texted a picture to the bishop, and he said, if they want my help, have them call me. So we called them. We called him, and he went and got the office set up, so we were able to just wait at home instead of waiting in a waiting room.
Oh, so nice.
Very nice.
Yeah, we went to his office, and I went to the other side of the whole suite, because I couldn't handle, hearing my baby scream.
Of course.
And so he got 3 internal stitches and 7 external stitches. So 10 stitches in total. And it was just absolutely heartbreaking.
Oh, I'm sure.
But yeah, I'm just like totally getting into my rhythm with things, feeling good about it. And then that happens. And, I know that Katie Ellis in our MOMnation community, her son, like, he went in, and the urgent care told him that he needed stitches, and she ended up spending hours in the ER sitting next to people that
Coughing.
are being diagnosed with coronavirus.
Oh my goodness.
So,
thank goodness for amazing neighbors. Like, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
Neighbors helping neighbors, people helping people.
Yes, and like that's been the most beautiful thing in all of this, is seeing people step up and help each other and be so kind and neighborly. And like, you know, when we couldn't find Tylenol, I was in Centerville, Utah. Somebody from Sandy, Utah, so like a good 45-minute drive or so, he messaged me and he said, I have Tylenol, I will bring it to you in Centerville. Like
Wow.
a 100% stranger, like just a Facebook friend that I knew from a Facebook group, is willing to drive that far to bring me medicine to help my child that he has no obligation to help. So yeah, just absolutely amazing.
The world is full of amazing humans still. That makes
really
me happy.
is. It really is. And that's been the thing that I think has stood out during this whole process, is seeing how good people are. Like, yes, we're seeing selfishness, we're seeing some, you know, panic, we're seeing hysteria, but we're also seeing the human spirit like come up and rise up and help people. So
We've just in MOMnation alone.
yeah.
I mean, how many posts have we seen of people offering educational things for when the kids are at home?
Or I have formula, or I have baby food, or I have,
I have
absolutely.
extra, let me know if you're in need. I mean, there's so many have stepped up, and
It's beautiful.
Makes my heart full.
So if you want to help us reach more people, more moms, more women like you, we do have a request, and that is that you go onto iTunes and you rate, review, and subscribe for us. If you're going to rate us, only rate us if you're going to leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a killer review, and make it so that other women like you are going to be able to see, like, okay, there's this awesome podcast that is designed for a mom like me. And anyway, yeah, when you do go on there, make sure that you download the episodes, because it's not the listens, it's the downloads that are actually counted for us.
Right.
And help us to reach more moms and to create more community like this to help more people. So that being said.
Yes. What do we got today?
We are talking about pandemics, right? So we're going to talk about pandemics. We're going to talk about the history of pandemics and just some information that you need to know about that. You also will want to, we're going to talk about the difference between preparation in a pandemic versus panic in a pandemic. And there's a lot of both going on out there. So that being said, we have Kimber Kay Morin with us.
Yay! Hello, Kimber. So excited to have you.
Thanks.
Yes. So
fun.
It's funny because
I've been following Beth's obsession with serial murderers, and I know it's really popular. A lot of the kids today are very interested. I went through my murder phase in my 20s, so but everybody says, "Oh, that's cool. There's all these shows," and I say, "Well, my favorite is infectious diseases." And that is a good conversation stopper, usually, because
but it's so helpful right now. And
right now,
you're
like, oh, what do you know? Download your knowledge into my head.
Right. You should look up Jen Duncan. She's into those too. She's another girl that's into infectious diseases.
I do love the diseases. I have my favorites. I actually have a PowerPoint entitled "My Favorite Pandemics" with nice Edwardian script. It's very beautiful.
It's so funny because, like, a few weeks ago, Kimber had said to me, like, "Oh, I have this presentation on pandemics. Do you think MOMnation would want to hear about it?" And I was like, I don't know. And so, we can see, sure. And then all of a sudden, like, we have a pandemic declared, and it's like, oh, look,
surprise! So Kimber did it. Now we know.
Now we know who to blame.
I've never been to China, and I don't eat bats or snakes, so I don't know if I'm really that responsible. But I obsessively follow disease news. That is true. I'm all in there.
That's so funny. So what the heck is a pandemic?
Pandemic is a worldwide infection. Back in the day, before air travel, worldwide could have just meant Eurasia. Most pandemics were even pretty localized. If it hit the Roman Empire, they called that a pandemic. A lot of the ancient pandemics. You didn't really have a worldwide pandemic. The very first one was smallpox, and that
Right.
wasn't until 1520. So worldwide pandemics are relatively new to human history, and there's only been a few true worldwide pandemics because a lot of the diseases, they sweep through and they skip Australia or South America. They don't quite get everywhere. But with air travel, 20th century is the age of pandemics. In fact, this is one of my library books. By the way, the library, of course, is closed. So I'm so glad I have my stash. I have a stash of books. This one, it's called The Viral Storm, The Dawn of the New Pandemic Age. Oh, so fun. Talks about so many fun things. But the thing is, this is not a problem that we're going to be done with in 2 weeks or 2 months or 3 months. This is going to be more of a permanent thing that pandemics will cycle through because we have air travel and people are so fluid in society, hopping around to different continents and even just large groups. There's so many conventions and different things you can do, lots of gatherings. Whereas 100 years ago, people might get together, groups of 50 would be a big group. Whereas now it's much larger people, much more fluid, and you're going to see a lot more of these diseases popping up. This is going to fundamentally change our society. And I don't look at change as good or bad. I think of change as change. It's going to happen. I'm just rolling with it. I'm actually really excited about all the different things that are happening.
Well, so one thing that I find really interesting about this is because of like how busy our lives have gotten. This is forcing everybody to like stop being so busy and slow down. And it's making me think like, just biologically how we're designed. We're not designed for the stress that we've been living with. And it's almost like, our bodies and evolution, this whole idea of it's going to force us to fix what's broken. We are being forced to step back into the historical version of humanity where we are working from home, where we are focused in our family units. Fortunately, we do have the connection because of the internet, but it has me evaluating like, was my life actually what I wanted it to be? Because I'm having all of this time where you have to sit here and reevaluate and restructure your life. It's like, okay, if I'm going to restructure my life, let me restructure it how I actually want it to be while I'm at this. So anyway, I just find that so interesting that like historically worldwide pandemics weren't this big, huge thing. And now it's becoming more and more common. Like it was just over 100 years ago that we had the last pandemic. And
oh no, that's not been the official last. But yeah, that's the big one. The Spanish flu.
Do go on.
Okay.
Right. Okay, tell us, Kimber.
Spanish flu is the there's been, like, you could say that SARS was declared a pandemic. H1N1.
Right.
Every couple years, it seems, there's a new one. Like I said, just in this 21st century, there's been a ton, and I'm not going to list them all. This isn't a comprehensive download of data, and there's just going to be more, because the fact of the matter is these viruses mutate. They're constantly changing. They come from animals. Most often they come from domesticated birds, but not all. But some sort of contact, human-animal contact, and then they jump to people. And once they've crossed that threshold of becoming contagious person to person, then you get massive infection because it's new and it just spreads like wildfire. So, but you're right, that Spanish flu of 1918, 1919 was crazy bad, and it was the first real true worldwide contagion. It hit everywhere. You could say there's parts of the Arctic, parts of the Amazon, parts of Australia that didn't get it, but in general, all the populated areas were affected. And we all, well, you might all know. I shouldn't assume you guys know everything. I know that's terrible.
Just assume I know nothing. Just assume that there's nothing that I know about this unless it's been a meme.
It's called the Spanish flu because it was during World War I, and at that time, President Wilson and other world leaders had put kind of a they put reins in on the press. They did not allow free reporting of what was actually happening with the war. And when the flu started breaking out, they definitely did not want people to know that their sons that they just sent off to boot camp were dying like flies on troop transports going over to Europe. They didn't want that getting out for obvious reasons. But it's a war. They couldn't stop sending the people, but they knew this was getting out of hand. So actually the flu virus started in Kansas in 1918 in the spring, because we joined up the war effort late 1917 with the sinking of Lusitania. And so we started sending all these people to boot camps, and crowded conditions, spring rains, mud, overcrowding, great opportunity for disease breeding. So the flu started breaking out there. Keep in mind, soldiers, so we've got men in their prime, young men, 18, 19, 20, early 20s. They're coming down with this flu and they're dying of it, which is very, very unusual. And as they're being transported across the country, it wasn't just Canada, it gets spread to all the other camps and it getting spread to the general population. But because they didn't want to tell the people about this, no real efforts were made to contain it or to treat it. The hospitals on the military bases were immediately overrun, and troop transport ships did not have the facilities to treat it. And of course, once they got to the front lines, forget about it. So we're often told that in wartime, especially back in the day, more soldiers died of disease than they did injuries on the battlefield. And this was definitely the case with World War I. Of course, that flu spread to the surrounding neighborhoods. So the residents of France and England, Germany, everyone's getting the flu, but everyone has, the press are under strict orders to not report about it. So the only government that is the one that's not involved in the war, and that was Spain. So Spain starts reporting on the flu that's been raging for months, and they start talking about it. And because they were the ones that talked about it, everyone said it was the Spanish flu. So it is a misnomer. So when they talk about what President Trump and what Governor Ducey and all these different local leaders are doing to, travel bans, quarantines, all of these things, if they had done that with the Spanish flu outbreak, it would have contained it to our shores possibly, or maybe some isolated pockets in Europe. It wouldn't have gone worldwide. But it did, because they didn't stop. They just kept chugging those soldiers out, and they just spread the disease. And then, of course, returning soldiers brought it back to the United States. This is fun. That pandemic started early spring, late March, early April. And in the summertime, deaths kind of went down. In the summer, people are more active outside, right? It's warm, except here. So forget what you know about Phoenix summer. I know everyone's cocooning.
I'm the only one that is.
Okay. But the rest of the country, summer comes, you're outside, the kids are playing outside all day, people spend a lot of time outside gardening or whatever. And the virus will die down. It will still be there, because not everyone's going outside. But the virus will linger. But then when it gets cold and rainy in the fall, the virus roars back. In fact, if you look at a statistic of the number of deaths in the United States from the Spanish flu in the year 1918, you see the flu deaths coming along in the spring, and then they'll go down in the summer, and it's a dramatic shot up in October. The most deaths that whole year, about 20 times the normal amount of deaths. Because as soon as the weather turned cold, people go in, huddle around to get warm, and usually it's darker. Those flu viruses, all these viruses thrive in dark, moist places, warm. And so you expose them to cold, you expose them to lots of heat, fresh air, sunlight, that's going to kill the virus. I guess they say not to say inactivate the virus so that it cannot multiply, it cannot be spread. But so I predict, and that's just from reading lots of nosy books about pandemics, that it'll die out when it gets nice and hot. Once we start having 100-degree weather, maybe not even 100 degree. Once it starts getting really nice, people are outside, it'll die down. Our numbers will go down. The rest of the country will probably be slower, but it's going to come back in the fall. It may even come back in mid-summer when it's really hot and people start staying inside. But this is going to come and go in waves. We're not going to see the coronavirus completely disappear. Just like some of these other diseases have not disappeared. The only one we've ever gotten rid of is smallpox, which was a concerted effort worldwide and truly a miracle of science and effort. But every other disease is still with us. If the conditions are right, it will come back. And it's a question of what can you do to prevent it from coming back? What can you do to prevent it from your home and your community? We are really fortunate. The United States has an awesome system. We've got good medical care, but in these kind of conditions, the medical system gets completely overwhelmed really soon, as you already said, Beth. You don't want to go to the hospital unless you truly are in dire need. But our sanitation system is one of the best in the world. We have flushing toilets.
Right.
Which is something that most people did not have in 1918. A lot of
And
people
a lot
had
don't now.
outhouses. Yeah. We can wash our hands. We can pop down the store, get some bleach. We have ways of sanitizing our homes, ourselves, everything. And it was not so. Back in the day, the best they could do was maybe they had some vinegar and boil everything. And that's what people did. And boiling, it will kill, but it's very time consuming and laborious. So if we just work on the sanitation, we're a step above a lot of countries. Keep in mind, China had the disease breakout there because their sanitation, I mean, they're keeping live bats in an open air market and selling them. I mean,
plus they have like a bajillion people living on top of each other, right? So
yeah, really close quarters. We complain about being high density population. That's nothing. China's crazy. So here we've got people spread out more. In fact, Phoenix is one of the more spread out cities in the whole, I kind of want to say, world. There's some cities in Alaska that are more spread out than here, but Phoenix is really spread out. We've got a lot of land area. Our population density is fairly low considering. So we've got those advantages here. We've got the sun that can burn out a lot of infections, and we got a lot of outdoor time that we can spend outdoors, and that really helps. I've had my window cracked open for the past 3 months, and probably another week it's going to be full on open. Windows open all the time, and that really helps. It'll help your flu virus, frankly.
Right.
Any other viruses that are in the way, we're going to be killing them along with killing the coronavirus, which is great. I really wonder, someday they'll probably do a study if the number of flu cases decrease because of all these measures we're taking to combat coronavirus. Because remember, the flu still kills way more people, and they over a broader spectrum of people also. I check the news every day, but I'm so pleased that no children have died from the coronavirus yet. And they seem to be not even having a difficult time with it. Of course, you could say, well, they carry it. They're little infected monkeys running around. Like, I know.
Like with everything.
But they're not dying from it. That is what the 1918 flu was different from other flus, is that flu killed young adults in their prime. Between 20 and 40, there was a huge spike in deaths. In fact, it took, it took over a dozen years off of the life expectancy for people in America. It dropped suddenly because of that flu. And of course, losing parents that were caretakers for 2 generations, then their children would become orphans and their parents would be left without that middle generation to hold everything together.
Right.
And you saw that in a lot of families. They would lose the mom or the dad. And I used to read a lot of literature back in the day. I don't now. I read nonfiction. I'm such a terrible person. But I remember reading all this literature, and it just seemed like, why are there all of these kids being raised by their aunt and uncle, or these kids that are orphans, these old people that have no family? I'm like, what is that? And it wasn't until I started studying these diseases of like, oh, these are remnants of this Spanish flu. because it was such a devastating thing to lose that generation of young people. But it lasted for generations. And that's what's sad is that, and I will say this, I know where everyone's being really cautious about older people, 65 and older, which I totally understand because they're very susceptible and they usually have underlying conditions. But one thing no one's talking about is how susceptible pregnant women are. And I will say that's the scariest statistic that I ever found when researching diseases is some diseases are worse than others, but sometimes up to 95% mortality for pregnant women. That means deaths. We're not nearly that high with this disease, but pregnant women are very vulnerable. And the MOMnation population, I know there's a lot of women pregnant. And when I was reading about diseases and pregnant, I would scare myself witless sometimes. I thought, if a pandemic strikes now, I'm dead. I don't think this one is the killer pandemic that will kill the pregnant women, but you're more susceptible to catching it and to having a worse case than someone the same age as you that's not pregnant.
Why is that? Is it just because of lower immunity?
Yeah,
That
your
simple?
immunity is lower because of carrying the baby, and it can be deadly. Like in the case of Spanish flu, it was very deadly. And that's why you read stories from the 20s and 30s about people that grew up as orphans because their moms died during the flu epidemic. I don't know if that's what killed the boxcar children's parents, but something did. But I just, so many books were always revolving around these poor little orphan children. And it's usually a pandemic that came in, swept out a generation, and then these people would write about it. And that was something.
That is interesting. I remember just like reading the Boxcar Children, and I was like, why are there like orphan kids that they're afraid to go live with relatives and that sort of thing.
It's such a strange thing today. You just think, why are there so many orphans? Because today that sounds crazy.
Well, and little orphan Annie, like, wouldn't she have been from that era?
Oh, her parents died in the fire. Don't you remember?
Oh, my bad. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, little orphan Annie. But it was an established literary archetype, the orphan, or maybe two kids that were orphans and sad but plucky, and they were gonna go out But that was the thing. It's very normal to have orphans in society until now. Now we're busy like, oh, let's get these kids into foster care. Let's get them in a family and boom, boom, boom. But it wasn't so long ago that they're just orphans everywhere. So sad. But we have so much more infrastructure today to deal with a pandemic than they did just 100 years ago. So, not just orphans, but dealing with educating your children while you're under quarantine.
Right. So my question is, and maybe this is a silly question, but I feel like more than just myself is asking this right now. So we have gone through that. We've had other pandemics, as you stated. I'm self-quarantining, so because of the nature of my travel, and I'm fine with doing that. I'm fine. Excuse me, with the school closures and things like that. I get it. But why are we going through this now? And I don't remember ever having things shut down like this in the past with these other, excuse me, I'm sorry, I promise I'm not sick. With these other flus and H1N1 and all that stuff that we, in my lifetime, have surfaced.
Well, the main difference I see is the rate of transmission is higher than these other things. SARS, H1N1, even Ebola, those had relatively lower rate of transmission. Rate of transmission is one infected person, how many people will they infect?
Will they infect? Right.
Yeah. And even that number changes on what day you're listening to the news and what country publishes their information. We're not going to know that true number until this epidemic is over. I shouldn't say a pandemic. But each country is publishing information, and it's all slightly flawed in some way. We're not going to know till this is all over. Well, from what I've heard, South Korea is probably giving us the most accurate, honest numbers out there. and their population is closer. I mean, obviously they're smaller, but their demographics are closer to us than, say, Italy, because Italy has an older population. Most of the European countries, the European ancestry, not the recent immigrants, Syrians and North Africans have been flooding into Europe for the past couple decades. But the people of European ancestry have had such a low birth replacement rate that it's less than replacement. The birth replacement rate it's normal 2.1 is how many children a couple would need to have to replace themselves. Some people aren't going to have a kid, and so that's why the 0.1.
Gotcha.
Italy is low. They're below replacement, so their population skewed old. Places like Japan, same thing, where they sell more adult diapers than baby diapers because there's just not that many children being born in their country. That's where we're at with a lot of industrialized, wealthy nations. Every country in Europe has that problem. The wealthier places do. United States has not got to that point, but that's only because we have so many immigrants coming in. If we stopped having a flood of immigrants into this country, our replacement rate would go down. Immigrants usually have a much higher birth rate than native-born Americans. So you get an immigrant come in and they've got 5, 6, 7, 8 kids. Their kids will maybe have 4 or 5 kids, and by the 3rd generation, they've got the same birth rate as regular people. People that have been here longer. But it's the norm. I grew up in a family of 8, and we were not the only ones. My husband's from a family of 11 children, and he was not unusual. And now I look around at all my friends. The average, my friends have 3 kids on average. Some only have 2, some have 4, a couple have 5, but I hardly see anybody with really large families. The large families are a generation ago. So I can see that just in my lifetime. I've seen the numbers go down. And that's okay. Everyone's got their own deal. But it just means that our population will contract, will have more older people, which is another benefit to society. But when you have a fluke like this sweep through, it's going to attack that end of the graph, the older people.
One of the other interesting things when you consider Italy and something that might contribute to it, when I went to Malta, which is like an island just south of Italy, when you walk out of somebody's flat in Malta, you walk out and you walk straight into like a crowd of people. Everybody is up on each other. There's like very little space between anybody and the next person. And so when you think about this pandemic where you're supposed to stay 6 feet away from people, when you are in a location where everybody is literally living up on each other and like that you can see the person that lives next to you at their balcony, that sort of thing. Logically, in my mind, it makes sense that the transmission would be higher because of that alone.
Yeah, those older cities, a totally different design. And here we are. We've been complaining about our suburban wasteland for decades. And now I feel like, hey, I want to be in my big minivan driving around and I can talk to my neighbor, 50 feet away. I did that last night. I was doing my irrigation and my neighbor came out and we started talking and, I'm fine. We're plenty of distance away and we can talk, and it actually gives me like an extra layer of security because I'm not on top of them. I can hear my neighbors over the wall. Can't see them. We're not passing any bugs back and forth. And it's kind of nice being in that position, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, absolutely. And
I almost feel bad for people I do feel bad for people in apartments, but apartments force you, especially if yours opens up into a hallway, then you're forced to breathe other people's air. And, if there's ventilation, that's great, but you're right. It's hard to say, you're not going to get it when, well, obviously, if you're sharing handrails and the people are right there.
So what can those people do
Well,
to help themselves?
I would disinfect shared things. If you've got a handrail going up the stairs, I'd wipe that baby down. Doorknobs are our favorite places for germs to collect. So are phones. And you're picking up germs all the time and putting them on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then you wash your hands, but then you pick your phone back up. You should really wash your phone every time you wash your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're, plug it in for the night, leave it there. But I hear a lot of people talking about hand washing. I think no one's talking about phone washing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there needs to be more phone washing, because I've seen the studies where they take samples off of a phone. You can grow some delicious colored staph infections off of what's on your phone. And why are there so many people using the phone in the bathroom? I don't get it. My husband does.
Yeah.
I set it on my dresser, go in the bathroom, wash my hands, come out. But I know guys do this. Maybe some ladies do. I don't know. I'm not judging. I'm just saying maybe that's a behavior that could be changed. But that's not even passing coronavirus. That's just gross. Don't use your phone in the bathroom. That's all sorts of bad. And then I've heard people say, like, oh, I dropped my phone in the toilet. It should not be there. It should not be near a toilet ever.
Unless you have a 3-year-old that likes to steal your stuff. That happens.
Oh, I was going to say, unless your son is always saying, Mom, come see my poop. It's so big.
Oh, you have one of those too?
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing.
So something that I've heard some concern about, and I don't know if there honestly is enough concern about it, again, practicing safe social distancing, I feel is important at this time, because if our hospitals, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the conversation, if our hospitals get overrun, what happens when I'm on the freeway with my son and I get into a bad car wreck?
Yeah, then your care is compromised.
Right.
Because then you have to battle out with they only have so many ICU beds in a hospital.
And emergency responders,
yeah,
those.
I don't know if it's related, but I did take my kids to the park yesterday because fresh air, sunshine, let's do that. And I heard all of these fire trucks going by. And I heard more this morning. I don't know if that's related to anything, but I just think that's a lot of fire trucks. Are there a lot of fires going on, or are they responding to people in dire need of care? We're just not hearing about it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what, Beth telling about Jack cutting up his eye. People are still going to break bones, still have car accidents, going to have heart trouble. My dad has heart disease, and he has to go in and get checked out. And sometimes he needs semi-emergency something, get this stent fixed or do this. And those people, if they can push back anyone's care, they're going to push it back because they're overloaded. Phoenix isn't overloaded yet, but I kind of think this is the calm before the storm. Just going to the pharmacy the other day to get my thyroid medication, I couldn't believe how long I had to wait. I dropped off the prescription Friday. Monday afternoon, they were still working on it.
Wow.
And they were overwhelmed. They had 4 people back there trying to bang it out as fast as possible. But the health system, it's a good healthcare system under the best circumstances. It's the best in the world. Under the really trying circumstances, then people start saying, oh, it's awful. It's not awful. It's just not built for this kind of crisis mode.
Right.
Pandemics, all the major pandemics in the past, I say all, like I studied all of them. I just studied lots. But all the good ones that are interesting, they end up making special hospitals, like in airplane hangars. They'll take over schools, big area auditoriums to make way for caring of the sick. Now, the problem is if you're talking about a respiratory disease, then you want to have a ventilator to intubate someone on a ventilator, and there are not enough of those.
Right.
If someone's just sick and feverish and something like that's something we can do. We can
If
put
someone
people.
wants to be a billionaire right now, they need to figure out a ventilator solution. Like,
You know,
really.
I part of the problem is the parts are made in China. So,
Oh no.
and China's under quarantine, so nobody's working. We are so tied, and not just us, the entire world. Our supply chain goes through China one way or another. iPhones are built in China. Our chicken is grown here, shipped to China to be processed, and then shipped back to us. Still says grown in the USA because it was grown here. But we've got so many products that are like that. We're part of their processing goes through China, and when China goes down, we all go down too, one way or another. I think there's going to be a lot of companies reevaluating their supply line going through China and may go around it. But any country outside of the United States, you're going to lose control when these pandemics hit. And these pandemics will not stop hitting. It's just going to keep coming. We're just going to learn to roll with it. But with technology the way it is, and you can work from home, you can learn from home, you can do so many things.
Right.
That makes it easier to adapt. And a current meme I'm seeing today is talking about Isaac Newton during the plague years in London. Cambridge University was closed, and he had to stay at home, and he did some of his best work there, inventing calculus, discovering gravity, blah, 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 doing all these things. And it's true. A quarantine could be a great time of people's reinvention, rediscovering arts and crafts and cooking and connecting with families and doing all these things. It could turn out to be a real boon to society in many ways. We're not going to know about that now. I'm just thinking long term. Here's another fun thing. This sweat kept me up last night. In a good way. I got all excited. My husband's trying to sleep. I'm like, are you sleeping? He's like, I'm trying. But after every major epidemic, and I usually talk about my favorite three. My top three would be the plague, Black Death, in the 1300s, which actually didn't ever get rid of. It's still, the plague is still out there. Just fun fact. The plague, and then why am I forgetting? It's the Spanish flu, of course, and smallpox. Smallpox went on for thousands of years. We don't know when it started, but it ended in 1979. But it was such a profound change in society. When every time these plagues went through a city, a country, it left profound social changes in its wake. And we could just talk about how the Spanish flu affected the United States. So it's during World War I. We've got young men dying. We've got people dying, heads of household, mothers, all of these people dying from the flu in a very short amount of time, just over a year. But what happened immediately afterwards? We get the 20s. 20s are famous for people going crazy, drinking, partying, making buco money, just rich. And, I think of the Great Gatsby and flappers cutting. I mean, what a difference. You have like the early 1910s. You've got characters like Mary Poppins, got Anne of Green Gables, and they have the long hair put up, they've got high button blouses, everything's just prim and proper. 10 years later, everybody cuts their hair short, wears sleeveless, low-cut dresses with fringed at their knees, and they're out drinking all night.
Yep.
What a change in society. That happened in just a few years. And that's crazy amount of change. Things like that happened in medieval Europe when the plague went through and killed a third of Europe. Suddenly all these serfs that have been just toiling away for nothing, for scraps from their lords on their lands, suddenly the price of labor goes up because there's not that many laborers anymore. Suddenly the middle class develops out of nowhere because of the Black Death. That was a huge change. And you have people not just being poor dirt farmers, they start developing guilds, skilled workers, because they got paid more and they could start specializing because they had enough wages to live on. With the Spanish and with smallpox, the North and South America were fully populated before the Spanish got here. But in 1520, when the first smallpox victim got here and spread smallpox, it depopulated 2 continents in short order. So the Spanish were able to conquer Mexico, conquer the Inca, and the United States continued that. We were able to push those Indians around because they'd been wiped out by plague just a generation or 2 before that. That is a huge societal change, because in 1520, there's all these mighty kingdoms in North and South America, and 100 years later, everybody speaks Spanish and it's Catholic. It just changes society. This pandemic is going to change society. I'm just making guesses.
I think it's, I mean, just looking at how much of our work can be done remotely when we've been forcing, people, my husband drives an hour each way every day. And does he actually need to? No. Like it's interesting because there's just so many things that like we've continued to do it a certain way because it's been done a certain way, and now we're being forced to do it a different way. And it's like the memes that say, turns out that job that I had to do in person, I don't actually have to do. I can actually do from home.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people that are not going to go back to the office. I think working from home is going to be way bigger. And education from home. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people that after having their kids home for this, okay, let's face it, they're not going back for the rest of the year.
You think?
I think school's out, kids. It's over. just get comfortable with that idea. But I think there's a lot of people that are going to say, you know what, I'm just going to stick with this homeschooling and just roll with it. There's so many options. It's not just coming up with it's scary to think homeschooling is coming with all the curriculum yourself and managing your kids like a prison warden, but there's a lot of online schools. In fact, I'm looking at a new one. I homeschool my kids, and I have forever. They go to like some support things, but those are down now. All the classes are, but everything is online, and all of these schools that are online, charter schools that are online, which are free for us. All we have to do is sign up. I think that's the way of the future. Every time you see a science fiction movie set in the future, nobody's in schools. They're all learning at home in a little cubicle, or they got a little group of 3 or 4 people in the classroom with all the smart kids. This is an antiquated school model that we've been holding on to just because it's what people say, oh, it's the way it's always been done. Well, no, it hasn't. Did anyone read Little House on the Prairie, or was it just me? School is whatever you need school to be. And right now we need school to be online from home. So that's what school's going to be. And we'll just roll with it. We may not go back to the old school model. It may be antiquated already. They just don't know it. I don't know how to break it to my teacher friends.
Hey, they're going to be able to work from home. Like,
yeah, they could still be teachers.
Yeah, teaching online. People have been teaching online for like VIP Kid, teaching kids in China. Mm-hmm. That's been going on for years. I think that model is going to become more the norm here. We'll have teachers teaching. In fact, one of my friends posted her son was doing a Zoom call with his teacher and other students. I think that would be a great way to get education going, to get that started. But you're going to condense it because you're not going to be video conferencing for 6 hours a day. Like teachers spend 6 hours educating a day. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be short bursts of interaction followed by independent study. And that's what I've been doing with my kids. Just giving them the time to do stuff, and then like, okay, now I'm going to manage you. We're going to sit here and do this, and then you do this on your own. And that's the way I stay sane. Because I have 3 kids, and I cannot do 3 different curriculums at once. I can't do it all. But I'm actually really excited because I think more opportunities are going to open up because the free market is not static. And if there's a move to go towards more home-centered online schools, they are going to fill that void. And I think by this fall, there'll probably be tons more. since Arizona's education, school choice state, we can do that. I love the fact that the charter schools, you don't have to pay anything to get in there. You can just get in there. There's one secret, Predna, I heard about. It's an online school, but they'll pay you to be a guide. I could get paid to homeschool my kids. I got to get in on that racket. I've been doing it for free like a chump.
Right. Oh, that is good information. So I have one last question here in closing for you. What do you suggest moms do, people do, just to keep up to speed on what's going on across the country, where we're at, without getting such biased opinions? Is there anything that you recommend that we pay attention to?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of people posting things, and I question where that information comes from.
Right.
Because if I don't see a source cited, I kind of worry. I'll take it with a grain of salt. I see a lot of people posting, they're like, oh, I'm reposting this from somebody that knows somebody that's a doctor in Omaha and blah, blah, blah. And you can read it and like, oh, that sounds really interesting. But I think I have no way of validating any of that information at all. And if we're talking about the age of fake news, that's the easiest thing to fake. It's just typed up. Right. It's someone's first person view of what's going on. And I'm not saying that there's probably a lot of people doing that, but it would be the easiest thing to slip in a fake one. It would be the easiest thing to cook up a fake graphic. If you want to know what the actual statistics are, the CDC keeps publishing stuff. I don't trust everything the CDC does because I know too much about them. But when they publish statistics, they're going to be consistent with what they're publishing. And like I said, South Korea seems to be the most honest country reporting. You really have to know what your sources are. If you're just listening to whatever you see come up on Facebook or whatever story Google's pushing, you're going to get a lot of scare tactics and people pull and prank. Why someone would prank about this, I don't know, but someone's going to do it.
Yeah.
And there's going to be false information out there.
Also, even on a really dumb level, there's that meme that's going around that says that The Simpsons predicted this, and that if you watch season 4, episode 21 of The Simpsons, that there was a coronavirus outbreak. So I watched it, and it's not a coronavirus outbreak. It's something completely different. So someone doctored this meme to make it look like The Simpsons predicted coronavirus, and they didn't.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm looking when I look for information, I kind of look for a wide variety of stuff, but I'm also looking, do they have facts? Is this statistics published from the World Health Organization? Is this from the National Institute of Health? Is this something that the president actually said? Or is that, like you said, Katie, you like to watch the press conferences? Do you see what someone actually says?
Right.
Because I don't want to read someone's interpretation of what they said. I want to hear it straight from them.
Bingo. And there's a lot of opinion out there. I'm seeing all these posts. The housing market's crashing. Really? Huh. I've worked in it for the last 20 years. I haven't heard that yet. So where are you getting this information? Where are your statistics? Where is your information? You'd think I would have heard about that by now.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything about housing crash. Although I'm super excited about this 0% stuff. I did see what you said about the house interest rates hasn't gone down, but
about 0.5% last week.
This is my week to get a car, right?
Yes. That's the kind of stuff. I mean, honestly, like you said, there's going to be a societal shift. There's opportunity in absolutely every corner that we turn, no matter what we're dealing with. And if you can kind of, clear the clouds a little bit and look for that opportunity and keep your mindset in the right spot, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And surviving with our sanity, I think, is the most important thing, because I don't want to freak my kids out. I don't want them to live through just feeling scared and nervous all the time. So I actually gave them my pandemic presentation and showed them. And there's some pictures that are a little scary, a little gory, obviously. People die. You have to talk about
Right.
Real facts. People will die from this. I don't know if it's going to be anyone we know, but there will be deaths. And this is why we're doing these things. But explaining it to them so they're not subsisting on memes and hearsays or half the news story they hear in the car.
Right.
Because they don't understand the language. They don't understand the significance. So I explained it to my kids on a kid level. My 6-year-old, it was way over. He doesn't care. But my 2 girls who are 9 and 11, they were really curious. And so I explained a lot of facts about the disease and about what quarantine was, and but also explaining that with a pandemic, quarantines do not prevent the disease. They only slow it down because it's going to come back and get you one way or another. So if we're just in the point where, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to slow down our contact with people, and it'll be okay. You know, my kids are sad that birthday parties are canceled, the library's closed, but we're also not locking the door. We're not that kind of case. I've heard some people say, they're like, oh, you should lock yourself in your house and not go anywhere. That's what Italy wishes they'd done. Yeah. And I think I'm seeing these videos of people from Italy, and I'm not 100% sure that that's something that's not been manipulated, because there's too many of these things going around, and I'll take it with a grain of salt. Say, you know what? They probably say, yeah, we could have done better. Okay. But I don't think that every meme and every article that I read is 100% true. But that's how I feel about politics in general or any other news story. Right. I don't automatically assume everything's true. I think, where are their sources? There's no way for me to check that these stories of Italians are correct. I cannot double check on any of that. So it's completely hearsay.
Yeah. So you've talked about you have a pandemic presentation. Are we doing that here in MOMnation, or? Oh, yes, we are.
We are. Next week, right, Kimber? I think it's
next week. I'm finding fun new graphics. Because to me, studying past pandemics really are the key to understanding new pandemics.
Right.
There's a lot of people, and I get side eyes sometimes from people, nurses or people that have they're like, oh, well, you're not a trained medical person. I think, yeah, but researching stuff. Okay, if I had it, when Beth asked what dreams are, my dream is to study diseases like serious, in depth, with a lab and everything, but maybe not this lifetime. But to read these serious books, this is my normal. Other people read romance novels, books on serial killers, whatever. I only have 2 of these right now, but I have some on the shelf. I'm immersing myself in this world, and most medical practitioners are not going to deep dive into past pandemics. No. They're going to focus on the here and the now.
Right.
So they don't have that background. In a lot of ways. Yeah. Absolutely. So when next week is the presentation?
I want to say the 27th. Does that sound right to you, Kimber?
I think it's the 26th. Wasn't it Thursday? 11?
There we go.
11.
What she said.
That's what I put on my calendar. Anyway.
Awesome. So guys, mark your calendars for that. We're going to have that presentation happening here. And if you've been intrigued and interested and just learned so much today, it's going to take that a lot deeper. So anyway, thank you so much, Kimber, for joining us. And guys, go friend request her. She's awesome.
Oh, seriously, it's been wonderful to get to know you a little bit better. Thank you, Beth, for introducing me to Kimber.
Well, of course. So
I'm so glad to be included.
Yay! You can sit at our table. Wee!
You all can sit at our table, guys. All you have to do is get involved and participate here in MOMnation. And share with us, what are you passionate about? We love to share what you're passionate about with this audience, and there's so many ways to get involved. So be sure to do that. Be sure to hop on over to iTunes and rate, review, subscribe for us, and download these episodes. And we will see you again next week on MOMnation Unscripted.
Yes, we will. Who knows what our topic will be? We don't. So,
We don't. We'll draw it out from a bag right before. So.
oh, that's right. We got to do the bag. All right.
Yes. All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, bye.